Wow. Okay, well, date owner. Uncharted. Hello, Uncharted. Are you watching these episodes? I know you watch some of my stuff, and I really do appreciate it. And I know you know my criticism is meant to make things better and not just to bitch and moan. And I know there's a newer version out than what came out today as I'm making this, and maybe you've dealt with this. But what the hell? Does anybody notice something here? The general government. This is what I'm not sure that I like about these Reichskommissariat. No, I'm not sure that this is a good defensive slash offensive lineup here. And I do think, and I was talking earlier about how, oh, and here, okay, oh God. Oh, God. Yes, I know you can't see me, but I'm sitting here with my hand in my chin, my other arm folded across my chest, my eyes closed, looking down in exasperation. And now I'm explaining why I'm sort of kind of used to be going silent here. Oh man. Okay. I've learned in Hearts of Iron 3 that it is best for Germany to take Switzerland. In Hearts of Iron 3 Black Ice, there's a nice events that happen if Switzerland is still around that actually help you out. But by not taking Switzerland, Italy feels it needs to stack up divisions along the Swiss border, as I'm seeing that Germany, let's see, three armored divisions, one motorized division, and some of these slashed helmet divisions, whatever they are. This one's called the Panzer Grenadier Division. What does it look like when it's all dressed up? But maybe later would have been called the Grenadier Division, but Switzerland ain't going to attack you, Germany. It's going to sit there and be neutral. There is absolutely no reason to put forces along the border. Now, Vichy isn't going to attack you either, but you might need to occupy it fast. Okay, so maybe Vichy needs about half of these forces, and I know Uncharted does AI programming here. This is man. I've talked to Uncharted, and I hope he watches this, but I really love that he's trying to do this historically. I really love that idea. We sort of disagreed over whether and it is a protectorate. Should it just be incorporated into Germany, or should it be set up as a Reichskommissariat puppet state? And it was the protectorship of Bohemia and Moravia. It did continue to run a Czech government under the protectorship. First, Konstantin van Rath, who actually technically stays on, but then he is, in practice, an underling is put on under him, but is the actual guy in charge, and that is Reinhard Heydrich, who is later assassinated. Reinhard Heydrich is really the person running the Czechoslovakian occupation until he's assassinated. And so I know the integration level here into the overall German economy is much greater than the level of integration for the general government. It would be more akin to the areas that Germany sort of re-annexes over here. But it might not be as well. I don't know how living here would have been. I don't know why this province has. Oh, I guess that's the old. Okay, I don't know. Whatever. How living here would have been. I've read descriptions of elements of it, but it's different than living here. Okay, living here and living here are two different things. There are very, very few Poles or Polish ethnic people. I'm not saying there's zero, and there's obviously, as time goes on, guest workers, and some of them are truly, they see a come work in Germany, good pay, good rations, whatever, posters, and they volunteer to go work in Germany, not because they love the Germans necessarily. Most probably don't, but it's my life is sort of shitty where it is now, where this may be, whether it's in France, or whether it's in the Netherlands, or whether it's in Poland. Your life ain't good where I am now, but maybe this poster is right, that I can go get a job in a factory or on a farm or whatever it might be, and eat better, get paid better, live just a little better. Okay. So there were Poles coming into Germany. And there were still some people of Polish ethnicity left over from the German Empire days that are, even though that don't leave to go to Poland, Polish national territory. There's still some, but not many. Okay. So this is basically German. This is want to be Germany, former Germany, and when it was under the German Empire, there was a sort of German overclass, and definitely had poor Germans. It wasn't like all the Germans are rich and elites, but there were German, basic workers, and there were German basic farm owners. But there was also lots of basic Polish farm owners and Polish workers under the German Empire. Because this was German Empire, this was Russian Empire. Russia sort of had a special zone for Poland that was different than standard Tsarist Russia. I'll get to some of the chats here in a moment. But so when the Germans first come in here, the Poles are like, yeah, the Germans did a good job running this place before. It's sort of nice to have a Polish government, but necessarily doing that good of a job governmental-wise. So yeah, it may not be so bad having the Germans back in charge again. I mean, that's literally how a lot of the German or the Polish farmers and whatnot felt about initially the German conquest. They weren't happy about it, but it wasn't quite the World War II propaganda movies, that British made. We're all fighting against the German oppressors. Quite like that. It really wasn't. At least not for the areas, particularly around here, because these, had been part of the German Empire, in the living memory, because, that's ending in, 1920? And 1939, so it's like 20 years. So a 40-year-old person would have been 20 years old when Poland's formed. Poland now disappears. The old guys are back in charge again. Yeah, I see some bootlicker or whatever Ragar saying, and I'm not, it's not quite as simple as that. I'll read the stuff a little more, but so it's not like they don't see it as a terrible thing. Now, they don't realize that Hitler is determined to wipe the term Poland from the map. This is incorrect. Owner, Poland general government. That is 100% incorrect. They called it, or the or der or whatever, general government. Okay? Never used the term Poland. They called it the general government. They explicitly, entirely, not just by accident, never used the term Poland for this political entity here. And it was a political entity. Now, Poles were part of the governmental system here. Okay? It was a German over government, but there was still a Polish functioning government. Postal workers, basic sort of government functionaries. You need to go get an identity card. You were probably talking to a Polish clerk, okay, that was issuing the new government. There were a bunch of Poles in basic level government here. Not like in the Bohemian Moravia, there were high level. Was it Hocha? One of them from the early days is still there. Now he's being told what to do. But he's trying to soften the blows, shall we say. And they're actually, a lot of the somewhat collaborationist Czechs, some of them, are actually trying to make the occupation not so bad. Now, there's some others that are ideologically on the German side and are trying to, kiss up to the Germans, too. There's both types here. Here, it's low-level functionaries. Anything high-level is gone. Okay, just gone. Some of them may be just, doing some basic factory job. Others are dead. Many of them are dead. Others are in, camps of some sort. Okay, it ain't good for the high-level types. Not quite as bad as the Katyn Forest massacre that the Soviets do, generally speaking, but it ain't good for the Poles. Trust me, it ain't good. It gets worse. Okay, it is a brutal thing. I am not trying to make light of this or excuse German actions. Okay. But this is want to be German in that there are still lots of Polish majorities here. They are desperately trying to get Germans from here to move to here to be farmers. They're desperately doing that. And it is failing miserably. They are not getting anyone willing to move to the wilds of Poland to start being farmers that are farmers. They get a lot of Estonian and Latvian Germans that leave there. First bunch before the Soviet invasion, that's about 3/4 that leave. About 90+% of the German ethnic minorities of Latvia and Estonia leave. About 70% prior to the Soviet occupation that the Germans arranged, the last 30% after. The great majority of those people are settled in what we're calling here want to be Germany, not the general government, but in want to be Germany here. A lot of them, no, most of them are not farmers. They're given farms. They don't know what the fuck to do. Oh yeah, you plow. Okay, how do you plow? Okay, when do you plow? What do you plow? How do you plant? What do you they don't really know what to do. They're given brochures on how to farm in 10 easy lessons or whatever the hell it's called. Sorry, I don't know exactly what it was called, but they're literally given brochures. And they're given Polish farms, here's your new Polish farmhouse and Polish farm equipment. What happened to the family? Oh, well, they got sent to the general government. And this cripples the agricultural output here. And what does Germany need? And you can look at I really like TIK. I disagree with some of TIK's conclusions. Some of us. I really like TIK. He does a great job on what he's doing. and often does a very good job explaining like what the Germans were thinking. And he talks about why, one of the videos, why Germany needed to invade the Soviet Union in 1941, and it was because of food. Okay, he explains it. Well, the German government, and sorry I'm going on another rant about all this. I hope it's interesting. And I will get back to chat, but not really paying attention to it at the moment. The German government isn't properly exploiting its own farm resources as it can naturally. Like Britain, you can see, and there's a really good living history program about the British farm during, down in this, here they actually sort of go to a farm that's sort of still in the old style, and what it was like to be on a farm during World War II. The rationing, how to plant, all of the programs, they really go in and look at what the farming situation was like during World War II. Starting in the early days, going through the later days, really look at what farming was like in Britain, what they were trying to produce food-wise in Britain. And that's sort of how I know some of this in detail. I'm somewhat extrapolating that to Germany. I know both countries had a similar program. They were called the Land Girls in Britain, and those were mostly city girls that, instead of getting a job in a factory, got jobs in the countryside. Some were cutting down trees, for military purposes, because you need wood, whether it's stocks for rifles or frames for the hurricane fighter or the mosquito fighter. They need wood. They're cutting, big trees. Now they use more, these are young women, obviously. They're using more young women than they would use men for the same job, just because they're not as strong. But obviously the men are need to go after the warfare. Similarly for farming, and you're getting a lot of city girls that don't know it, and some just really sort of just don't function well at all in the farms. Others are really learning and trying to pick up the skills, and they're slower than the farm guys that have been sent off to war, but they're better than nothing. Germany has a similar program through the BDM and the Reichsarbeitsdienst, W, or is it WRH Arbeitsdienst? I think it's W, and it's the women's rights, the women RAD. That they're trying to put women working on the farm because they don't have enough labor on the farms. Like I talked about guest workers or whatever that they're getting in. They don't have enough workers on the farms. And so TIK is like going, well, yeah, and Goebbels is talking about in his diary why they need the food, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not disputing anything that he's reading from Goebbels' diary, because he's reading that correctly. And he is reasonably accurately expressing what the Germans were thinking at the time. But that isn't what the Germans needed to do, because the Germans have this huge army here, and they wanted to get food with it. So they decided to attack a country to go collect food, instead of going, oh, hey, yeah, you 500,000 German soldiers, you're still in the army, but you got leave. Go home and farm. And more than just, say go home and farm. Send them out to farm working, okay? They could have turned those soldiers into farm workers, because a bunch of them already were farm workers and knew how to farm. Okay, they did too. The Polish farmers that I talked about earlier were sort of like, yeah, hey, the old masters are back, basically. And they thought, and they had reason to think this, not that it's what happened, but yeah, the old masters were going to be back. The old masters weren't terrible. They weren't, our own masters, but the old masters were back, and things were going to get back to the old ways, which weren't terrible. I don't know if they were as good or as bad as being a Polish farmer under an independent Poland. Definitely Tsarist Poland, or Tsarist territories back in here, is probably independent Poland's better. Definitely independent Poland is better than Soviet rule. Like I did say, it started under Catherine the Great, that when she sort of gets Poland, she sort of sets up this idealistic state that doesn't have serfdom, that is sort of Western looking, and it's sort of an idea of an experiment to what we might do if we think it can sort of kind of work in Poland to slowly integrate it into the Russia. Now, of course, they don't quite do it, so there's a Russian Revolution. So they don't ever westernize Russia. So they have the Bolshevik Revolution ultimately. Start with the Menshevik and then into the Bolshevik revolutions. Had they implemented some of what they were already doing in Poland early enough in Russia, they could have avoided a lot of that stuff. But they also had trouble with their elites not wanting to do the Polish experiment. So I don't know if the Poles that lived here under Russia are thinking that independent Poland is, so marvelously better than Tsarist Poland, Oh, and also note that during World War I, Germany sets up a puppet Polish government that the Poles really like. There is definitely German ideas of expansion of territory in the East during World War I that you're not actually going to incorporate into Germany, but they're also toying with and have set up at least temporary, a Polish puppet government to run themselves internally. It's not like, oh, well, we want to be in charge and you're just our puppet. No, it's like, do your own thing. Just don't mess with our war effort. Make sure the war effort's going fine and do your own thing. And, you don't get to, make your own foreign policy or anything like that, but run yourself. And they supposedly worked well. There was a bunch of Germans like, yeah, hey, worked this out well. German oversight. It was going great, supposedly. It was more like an area like this as opposed to huge, but there was an actually sort of German puppet Polish government during World War I on the East. And so the Poles, there's getting all this Hitler rhetoric, but is that just a lot of talk, or do they really want to do bad things? Now it turns out, again, I'm not trying to, it is very, very, very bad for the Poles. Okay, that's how it turns out. But they don't know this at first. And Germany makes it worse by their confiscating farms and giving them to either inexperienced Germans, because if you're a farmer, you don't really need another farm in Poland. If you're a farm worker, a few are like going, that I haven't been drafted yet. I'm going to take up the idea of maybe getting a farm under one of these plans or schemes that are going on here in the East for them. I'll take this up because I'm the second son, or I'm just a farm laborer. I think I know how to farm, run a farm. I'll take the offer. Very few are doing it, but there are a few. Most of them are people that are like cities and are getting the pamphlet, How to Farm in 10 Easy Lessons. And then the Germans that are coming out here are not really given much of a choice as to where they're going to go. So they're settled down in here, and they're given the farm and the 10 Easy Lessons pamphlet. And it cripples food production, okay, in this area. It goes from, a sort of a breadbasket of food production that would be stepped up from what it was under Poland to a failing system that almost doesn't even feed itself, let alone not export food to the Greater Reich. So Germany is making all kinds of mistakes when it comes to various production issues, including food production. Okay, so again, we're talking about this sort of what's going on with Uncharted. So I don't know, if you're a German here, how often do you have to need to show your pass to move around in this part of the new German Reich? Because there's are there, constant roadblocks, constant people stopping? Oh, you're German. Okay, go on through. Because you're not running into that in Germany. But there's enough Poles here that there's a lot of security running around. So I don't quite, want to be Germany. I mean, this is wannabe, this is Germany. I'm not saying that the people want to be, but Germany wants it to be Germany. This is wannabe Germany, but it's still sort of under Czech control. This is currently wannabe Poland without the Poland name. What are we going to do with all these people? They had yet to start the final solution, and they're really thinking these are going to be more laborers out somewhere in the East a labor population that will just move to wherever we want to eventually. It's not a little bit extinction, but more through starvation than any death camps. And here is military occupation. Okay, Uncharted. And this is still a lot of directing you. Hey, Sebastian. I'll get to some of the chats. What's the hell the difference between here and here? I mean, this is Calais, France. You set up a Reich Commissariat. There's no one freaking defending here. Now, yes, it would be stupid for Britain to invade because it would just become another Dunkirk situation, and either the forces would be cut off and surrounded and destroyed, or they would be pushed back into the sea right now. Absolutely. But I'm just guessing. I could be wrong, but I'm just guessing that once America's in the war and they got a bunch of forces here, this won't change. So this is like, oh, hey, yeah, we can invade here, no opposition. Oh, we're guarding the Vichy border. We're guarding the evil Swiss border. Recently found a nice photo of a German and a Swiss guy, or Swiss border guards standing each other with flags behind them, useful for some event someday. But yeah, cool. Yeah, we're wasting forces here. We're not guarding the coast at all here. We're doing an okay-ish, sort of guarding the coast, some of the sort of strategic points here. Yeah, okay. Norway is looking sort of kind of bare. So's Denmark? Again, in the newer version, you may have fixed this. This is why I don't like, these Reich Commissariat. There really wasn't a Reich Commissariat over here. There was military government. Reich Commissariats are a political thing. Military governments are a military occupation thing. Which has been done here, but Luxembourg is incorporated. This is wannabe Germany also. They're all given German identity papers. They're not given a choice. About 600 men are drafted into the German army from Luxembourg. They're not given a choice. They're not put into some special SS foreigners unit. They're just drafted into the German army. About 600. So, yeah, I get you're wanting to be historically correct. This is, I think, a mistake. Maybe it's also a mistake because maybe they feel they need to guard the border from it. But this is a mistake because they're not guarding the border. And I'm guessing, haven't got there yet, but when they're getting ready to go to war, they're not going to have forces along here to ready to burst into Ukraine or wherever. And they're not guarding here. So now you may be, and I do know some mods are really designed to be played from the German perspective. And so the human player is going to put forces here. The human player is going to put forces here. The human player is going to put forces here. And yes, it may be that German AI, if this was part of Germany, would put too many forces here and not enough on the Eastern Front. That could be the opposite problem. But this is just not good. Okay, what is the... Let me go up the chat. Okay, regular. Empty space, and the Czechs remembered fondly Heydrich, who sometimes did something for the Czechs. Well, I don't know how fondly the Czechs really look at Reinhard Heydrich. I know some Czechs are upset that the Czech commandos go in and kill him, and then, of course, the Germans, butcher a town because of it. Pomerania is more here. Well, no, here and here kind of thing, around Breslau. I think is what, if I'm getting the terms right here. This is here. This is the border, the pre-war German border here. This is, East Prussia, Memel, Danzig region. It's sort of here. And you can see this clearly. You look at a railway map of Poland, and you'll clearly see the border, the old border between the German Empire and the Russian Empire, and the density of rails. Almost zero railway is built during the Polish government period. All they're really doing is connecting up some railways that weren't connected before, short, like the Russian railway may have went to here, and the German railway went to here, and they're just doing a connection bit here, as well as, because the Russians on the Russian gauge, width of the rails, and the Germans are on the sort of European standard gauge that they're using. They do convert some of the lines, especially some of the stuff going into Warsaw, to the sort of the German standard. They leave a bunch of the other stuff to be on the old Russian standard. Now, when Germany comes in, they reconvert before the war kicks on. They're not reconvert. They convert the rest of the They do a lot of work on. They increase the number of, or the how much railway is in this part, including the general government, but also just generally in occupied territories. They increase the amount of railways going there. They put it onto the German standard. They get it all very efficiently running, or relatively efficiently running. They really put a lot of effort into improving Poland's railways, getting ready for this. So they get it ready. They really in 1940, 1941 early, they're really pushing a lot of railway work in Poland. The Germans are, but again, it's mostly not. No, there is some new railway production going on, but really it's just putting it to the German standard. So, but you can see the border just by looking at the map. Okay. Ethnic, yes. Ethnic, not ethic, if I said it wrong, sorry. Okay, I don't know from what source you're talking the kind of statements, but they're not true. No one was happy about German. Okay, I'll tell you my source. Let me come here. It's an audiobook that I listened to. So let me look it up. I don't have it on my shelf here. I'll tell you my source exactly is what I'm saying about all of this. And you know what? Maybe the book is lying to me. It's possible, but I will tell you my source. Oh, got it. Hold on. Hold on. I'm not going to say it out loud, but let me look at the password here. Okay. For all that I've been saying about Poland and German occupation in Poland particularly, you're claiming it's not true. Now, may disagree with what you believe, but where is it here? It's here somewhere. Yeah. No, not that. Hold on. Hitler's Empire, How the Nazis Ruled Europe, by Mark Mozower, Mazower. Drawing on an unprecedented range and variety of original research, Hitler's Empire sheds new light on how the Nazis designed, maintained, and lost their European dominion offers chilling vision of what the world would have become had they won the war. I mean, that's just a quick blurb. You can find Hitler's Empire on Amazon, of course. Oh, I can't paste into there. Oh, well, you can look it up. Hitler's Empire. That is my primary source for my statements about Poland and what the Polish farmers thought. He goes into detail, describes from original sources, obviously translated into English, about what was happening in there. So, Lorgius Polsk, sorry, you may, Polish took a terrible price on the people's lives. Well, not according to his research. His research may be all wrong and all lies. Go argue with him. I'm going from the book, and he's showing his where he's getting it from. So that is it. Starts against. No one was happy after 1918 for any German people trying to rule. No, that's not quite true. People wanted Germany to rule. Pre-World War I, German occupation zone Polish farmers were not allowed to buy or later build houses on land, and the Polish language was forbidden to be taught in schools. Or German effort under the Russian part of Poland, there was a big poverty but poor infrastructure. Well, I don't think it's quite so cut and dried, because you have read the book. I guess that's the best thing I can say. The easier but not much better solution under Austrian occupation. All right, okay. Czechs hated his replacement more. Who was it that replaced him? Because it was Walter, somebody who replaces him as charge of the SD. But I forget who replaces him as for occupation. Overlord in Poland. The problem with Western literature about Poland, because they're usually wrong with most facts regarding Poland and neighbors. Yeah, okay, Mark Mao. Okay, good. You got that right there. That is who. You can look it up on Amazon. I listened to the Audible book. I sort of decided to skip over some of the because it was dark about Poland. Because it starts out, the Poles are like according to the book, are sort of like, yeah, I'm not talking about the hooray for Poland nationalists in Warsaw. I'm talking about the farmer who lived here on some farm. He had a farm. The Germans were back. But they talk about how they quickly learned that certain markings in front of a farm building, in front of a farm, meant, oh, this farm's going to be taken away from them. So they would quickly pack up all their belongings and be ready to leave, and make sure that everything was nice for the new German owners and be ready to go. And so that they were ready to go, because they would be given less than an hour notification that they were leaving, so that they were all packed. I mean, they talk about the terror it was in 1940 and 1941, and how it gets worse and worse. And they talk about, and I forget it, under the general government area. Well, there's several different Gauleiters and different rulers that are ruling in some of these parts. One of them is sort of like, yeah, German, or the Jews are sort of like, yeah, but we sort of need them to run this part of Poland, so they sort of leave them there for as long as they could. The other one is like, get them out, go, get them out. And that part of occupied Poland just collapses, where the one Gauleiter, who's still a Nazi and doesn't like Jews, but leaves the sort of Jewish technical class in place there in Poland for as long as he can. that part runs better. And they go into this in the book. And so, again, the book may be all wrong, and I got it all wrong, but that's where my source is. And apart from my book knowledge, I have his word stories. I'm not going to dispute his views on what he understands about being occupied by the Germans. Hello, Frosty HD. How you doing? Right, and the source, again, I'm going from the source, and it's a relatively new book, meaning it's not like 1970s book written during the Cold War, but I'm just going from the book that I have. Oh, and things get, if you talk about people dying per family in Poland, yeah. No, things get very dark. I'm talking about when see, another thing is very true. When Germany enters the Ukraine, they are generally very popular with the Ukrainian people, okay? When they enter the Ukraine. Now, of course, there are some diehard communist Ukrainians that are, hate fascists, Nazis, whatever, and are willing to kill large batches of Ukrainians just to give them the wonders of communism. But most Ukrainians are happy that the Germans are showing up. Now, by the end of German occupation, as the Soviets are starting to come in, about half or more of the Ukrainians are more mad at the Germans than they are at the Soviets for the Holodomor, okay? Now, a bunch of the Ukrainians continue fighting even after Germany surrendered. They continue their sort of forced war against the Soviet occupation. So they're more in line with the German, because the Germans treat the Ukrainians badly. It's just the Soviets had treated them even worse before. I mean, they're being treated badly by either side. So the opinion of a person, and I'm not going to talk about, because I don't know your grandfather, and I'm not going to question his words, but an opinion of a person living here on a farm in late September 1940, and that same person in September 1944 is very, very likely to change, okay? I'm not talking about a Pole who is living in Warsaw or Lodz or some city, and there's a huge attempt by the Poles, and this book goes into it, of trying to, how the Poles work to ethnically cleanse Poland of Germans, both from the former German Empire and from places like Warsaw, which had been in the Russian zone. They're trying to push out the Germans. They're ostracizing Germans. If you are German, German ethnic peoples. I don't want to say race, it's ethnics, because I don't know if there's racially any difference between some of these individuals. But do they sort of speak German, identify German? They also speak Polish too, but they're excluded from government. They're excluded from just about anything significant, and so they're being pushed out of Polish society. Now, Hitler and the Nazis are trying to incentivize the Germans not to leave Poland, to give them the excuse, you're not seeing my air quotes, but the excuse for future invasions, because they don't want all the Germans to leave. Then it's no longer, oh, well, we want to reclaim this territory because the Germans are living here and being abused by the Poles. But the Poles really were trying to ethnically cleanse territory of German people. And the Nazis, once they're in power after 1933, are really trying to go, no, stay. They're really pushing them to stay. So yeah, and the book goes into how, and it's just a chapter on it, but how the Germans set up a Polish puppet state during World War I. Not in the old German Empire territories, but in territories that they captured from the Russians during World War I. So it goes into that. Oh well, yeah. Look at the book. There's definitely a lot of German occupied forces. Oh, I know, and the Ordnungspolizei. Oh, there's a lot of them there. Um, if you look at my mod, Third Reich events for um, Hearts of Iron 3, you'll see that I know the Ordnungspolizei. There's SA. They set up an SA unit, Sturmband or whatever that level of unit was called in Warsaw. That's Germans there. Oh, and they set up SA units in other wannabe parts of Germany, as we're calling it for the moment. Meaning the Germans want it to be part of Germany, whether it's really part of Germany or not, by current political organizations. I'm not talking about what it was claimed in the empire, what it's today. I'm talking about how they were organizing it up, whether it's just like it was in Germany or sort of kind of halfway or whatever. There's SA units being set up and operating there. There's a lot of forces, not just army or whatever forces, but a lot of forces are definitely occupying in Poland for sure. Yeah, and I'm not disputing anything you're saying there on a personal level. Trust me on that because I don't know your family. I'm not thinking and trust me when I say I don't know just because I don't know, and I'm not thinking you're saying something that is incorrect. I'm just talking about what I've read, and he was citing his sources and not just saying it in a general sense. I mean, he was citing specific sources and then making some generalizations based upon the specific sources that he was talking about. And I wish I also had it in print. I just got it in audiobook, and I've listened to it. And it's grim. I stayed away from the because it gets more grim when they start talking about the final solution and the camps of that stuff. But it's even grim for just the standard Poles who are not the ones put in camps, as for being, because they do go after the Poles that are known to be socialists or communists. They do go after certain leadership Poles that they put into camps and whatnot. I know that, but the average Pole. Now, sometimes the average Pole is just lined up and shot against the wall as retaliation for a resistant action. But it's grim. I'm not saying it's not grim. I'm not saying the Germans were good. I'm just talking about that sort of early first days that Germany comes in. And Germany can make a choice. Is it going to go full evil or just we're the new guys and we're the new baddies but in charge? They decide to go full evil. And some of them go, not full evil, but I'm talking the leadership elements, not an individual soldier who's a good guy who's just there on occupation duty. Hey, if some resistance guy is going to shoot at him, he's going to shoot back, and if his buddy's killed, he's going to be pissed at the resistance for sure. But he's just a soldier. Yeah, obviously, those happen in all armies, even on the bad guy side. That they're just good people that are soldiers in war. But I'm talking about the political leadership. Like I was saying, and I forget, because I listened to it and I can't just quickly go look it up. One of the Gauleiter regional leaders, he's like, no, Jews are Jews, of course, but they're the sort of technical class in this region of Poland. We're going to leave them doing their technical jobs. The other one is Jews, get rid of them. Fire them, even before they're starting the final solution. Just fire them from the job. Just get them out of any sort of job. Just confiscate their property. Just everything. And that part of Poland just collapses economically. And so I look at this data and I look at what TIK says, and I'm not disputing, again, any of his original source work that TIK is doing and how the Nazis are viewing this. But I look at it and going, okay, well, this Nazi administration in this part, let's just theoretically say, and this part of Poland is working well, but this and well, this part of Poland, occupied Poland, is working badly. Again, this is just for sake of argument. This is working badly. This is working well. Okay, so we're not talking about magical good Nazis that were going to be nice guys. We're talking about they're still both Nazis. They're still both bad guys. We're not talking that, one's okay and one isn't. But they could have followed policies like this guy and not the bad, or the really bad, and I'm talking for Germany, the bad policies that this guy's doing. So I'm talking within the realm of Nazis still being Nazis, but being smart about it. And now one of the things they talk about in the book, not so much about Poland, but more about some of the Reichskommissars in the East. Nobody wanted these jobs, okay? That's a high caliber. They wanted to be in Berlin. Well, that's where the government job promotion train is, in Berlin, or in some prestigious part of Germany. Being the electrical grid manager for Munich area or whatever. They did not want to. So they get mostly a really unprepared, untrained personnel that are running the Reichskommissariats out here in the East. Talking more this part, not so much Poland. And so they get a lot of incompetence out here because they don't force, by just simply reassigning competent people that they have in Germany to run parts of here. And some of the prime people are just political appointees that are sort of doing a favor to. And so the Reichskommissariats in the East just don't run well for the most part. There are some exceptions to it. And so I'm not talking about finding entirely new groups of people. I'm just talking about better organizing, including along National Socialist lines. The same group of people just doing the job, just assigning different people to different jobs, because you can have like the head of some branch here and the assistant of some branch, of the same branch here, that are good, well-functioning bureaucrat of whatever bureaucracy we're talking about, whether it's railway bureaucracy or whether it's food production bureaucracy or whether it's food distribution, bureaucracy. Some are collecting it from the farms, others are giving it out to the people. Whatever the bureaucrat we're talking about, you'll have the guy in charge and the deputy are both good and competent people back here in, somewhere prestigious in Germany. And there's two incompetents, the main guy and the secondary guy out here. They could have taken the number 2 guy out from here and sent him out here, and he would have done a good job because he knew his job. He was probably qualified to do his boss's job. It's just his boss is already doing it. So they don't do a good job at assigning people, particularly in the East. And the East is run more, please note my words, more by the political bureaucrats, not the war, but the administration is run more by the political bureaucrats in the East, where it's run more by the military bureaucrats in the West. So there's lots of terror in hello, Beam Slam. So, well, there's, of course, Poland, there was lots of terror. Oh, absolutely. What would have happened had the Polish only had to worry about the Germans in 1939? It would have affected. Well, Poland was not going to be able to withstand Germans' attacks. It just wasn't. And France was just not willing to go on the offensive fast enough to save Poland, if at all. So Poland's doomed. It's just doomed. Well, I'm hearing what you're saying, but we all know that Danzig welcomed. I mean, Danzig was German. Danzig is Deutsch. Danzig was Nazi. The Germans ran